Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button and I'm a granite sculptor. Welcome to video number 107 of the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Alright, still working on this side. I wanted to mention something about the saws as I'm doing this. Turn this a little bit. Now, I'm sawing in here really careful, and I mean really careful. I'm not going anywhere near the bottom of where I need to go. I put a cut in. This is actually still tall. It doesn't quite set down. It's still, that's half an inch almost tall. And I'm matching it across and I'm staying up on this side. You gotta figure out whether you're good enough to go fast or not. If you put one stripe in here that's too deep into that face, you gotta take this whole almost 6 foot face back to clean it up. And that's a big fail. So you gotta really be careful. I'm opening this up a little bit. Now I can just go down with a hand machine very easily. Strip a whole bunch right off of there that I don't have to 9-point it, and then I'll go the last 1/8 of an inch, 3/16 of an inch, all with a 9-point with tools. So I'm going careful. I want to be careful not to flog it too hard, because remember I told you about where you axe and it crumbles out. So that's something you got to think about. The other thing I wanted to show you, I spent a lot of time deep in the cut with this sawing this side off. It's a lot of work on a blade, and if you don't spend the money on good blades, that blade will get down in the cut and you'll be down there and going, and that blade will start to flop, just like it'll look like a little flippy flyer or frisbee. It'll start to flex. You'll be able to see it, and that is really scary when you've got this blade 2 inches deep in the cut and that blade starts going, because any second that blade can fracture. That blade can grab, that saw will shoot out of your hand, it'll hurt you, it'll hurt the stone, it's really bad. So don't go buy cheap blades and think you're going to get away with it. I got some cheap blades one time we went to see some company that was closing down. They were making diamond blades, and they had all these fake diamond blades that looked like the Osaka diamonds and the disco blades and everything, and they were crap. I used one of them for a couple minutes and I still got them in the building. I had them for 15 years because they're so treacherous. I don't dare do anything with them. I'll use them to dress my wheel on my grinder. What I wanted to show you, I wanted to see if we could get up in here. This blade got hot. You see right here, see that little rainbow? Right there. That means that blade's starting to thermal. And if you overheat a blade, now it's not bad yet, because what will happen is that this diamond segment will change that color and turn all rainbow blue, purple. And when that happens, that blade will grab like it's got glue on it or something. It'll grab, and then all of a sudden it'll just kick right back, and it's really bad. So you got to be careful. It's hard when you're deep in a cut to keep a blade cool, and you can squirt it with water and cool it down, but I'm not sure whether that's good for the diamonds or not, because once the diamond gets super hot, it fails. It'll fracture, and then it's not cutting the bond. From what I understand, now you've got just the bond there, and the bond will grab because it expands, and the diamonds aren't there to clear a way path for it, so it'll stick. It'll also happen if you get the diamonds ice cold. I tried doing some ice one time. We were carving ice, and I thought, let's see what a diamond blade does, because the guy was telling me use the roughest, coarsest grinding blades you can on ice. And so I tried diamonds, and it acted just like I thermaled them. So I don't know if they fracture when they get super cold, but they were junk. I couldn't use them after that, so I don't really understand that. But I wanted to mention it. I wanted to show you that thermal, because I got this, there's that blade, there's 2 or 3 segments here where the base, the root is starting to thermal on the actual blade, and the diamonds haven't thermaled yet, but they won't be far behind. So I'll just have to keep it dressed and be careful with it. But I'm going to go back to just cutting this, and unless there's something really big, I hope I can wrap this up. I got a lot of work. This will take another day at least to finish all this up, because I've spent about a day and I'm not halfway there yet. So I want to try to just work. As we go forward, I'm going to have gaps, and when these videos come out, I don't think I need to put hours and hours and hours of me pointing with compasses. I'll try to do some complete demonstration of it, but after that I've got a lot of work to do, and so it may slow the videos down. We'll just see. So let's get back to work. Now the nice thing about having a clay floor is you can either take your garden hose or your watering can, and you can keep everything wet down. And as you go into the heat of summer, there's two benefits to this. You can rinse everything off so stuff is clean, and then when you disturb it later on, you don't have to suck a big lung full of dust, because you just stirred up all this dust that's laying there. But as this water soaks into the floor, it's going to eliminate some of the ambient dust issues, because you're not going to kick it up as you're walking around or shuffling your bench or picking up tools. And then it's also going to cool things down while you're working. And so it's really nice, because it's like having a little bit of air conditioning. So that's I'd feel really uncomfortable carving in a studio that had concrete floors, and that may just be because I came up on dirt floors. That's how Gary did it, because it's a safety measure for both your feet and for the stone, but it provides the added benefit that you can take and water it with a watering can. I left my big watering can I had up at Gary's, and I got another one down here. It's a little bit smaller, and gave it to Andy. And but when you work on concrete, the dust is way more prevalent, because it isn't captured potentially by the floor. And this way, till this dries out super well enough, it should be even better. All right, time to start cutting and get back to work. As I'm working this, I want to point out a few things. Now, earlier on, when I talked about using a saw in general, when I was cleaning off that bevel on the bottom, on the edge, when I was tipping that edge along the joint, I talked about the importance of keeping your saw flat and not tipping it, so that the back didn't erode and ruin your line. We also talked about being up a little bit on certain cuts as a protection. Now, I could have been really, 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 really anal and tried to saw this perfectly flat. The risk is, if I dig at all, I can cause a lot of damage really quick in terms of having to fix this entire side, and so I don't want to do that. So you still have to keep it straight when you're cutting, but I opted on this face when I did these cuts. I wasn't perfectly, I don't know if I can put this on here, I wasn't perfectly 90 degrees. I was tipped a little bit like this, and this is exaggerated. But that way when I cut, you see as we go down here, this gets deeper and deeper. That would keep me away from ruining this important area down here that I've got to have right. So I could cut, even before I plan to do the whole thing all at once, I still have to cut it. And it's really tempting to try to go after it all the way with the saw and think you can just go fast. And You go fast all right, and you either go fast good or you go fast bad. So I opt to tip it, have a little bit extra material, because for the most part, I've got up to about an inch deep I've got to go. Now it's important to keep track of your pattern, whatever you're measuring with, whether it's just a square like this, or whether it's a more elaborate pattern like those ones we cut out for the Scotia. Keep track of the pattern and how it registers and what you're doing, because this face is not perfectly straight. You know, I wandered a little bit in and out, and I didn't wander under anywhere, but I've got a low spot here and then the other big low spot further down. And so I'm deeper on this end of my cut than I am right here. So I have to not go by how deep this is, I have to go by how my pattern checks. And it's easy to get lost and forget about that. You also end up with this bottom edge, because this wanders in and out some, and this wanders up and down some because it's not a straight cut. This line isn't necessarily going to look very straight. And don't get confused with the pattern. As long as your pattern's good, you don't have to worry about going on like this as much, checking it, because that's really tight all through there. Up here, I'm still tall. So this looks really out of shape right here. The same thing when you come up against a line where you've already fixed it. Don't push that line in. This whole edge, I'm really close down here, but I'm still high, just a little bit as it goes down. The last thing I want to do is dig the bottom out and have it low. I want to have this crown out just a little bit, so when I come in from this side, I can meet it. And all of those things you've got to keep track and do them all the time. I'm also transitioning for some of the rough end. I'm able to use a 4-point. And it's really brutal. It doesn't take off stone in a particularly clean fashion. It's a very rough surface. But you can bust it up with this when it's tall, then go in behind it with a 9-point and get it pulverized down to where it's pretty close. But I don't want this to wash out and crumble out when I start axing it. So when I start getting really close for that last 1/16 of an inch or so, I'll use a 16-point, and I'll keep the tool relatively, I won't run it really fast. I'll keep the machine or hand machine running a little bit slower, because I want to work this into shape carefully. But you run into the same issues doing this as you will with a saw. If you're going up and down and you go like this, that bottom edge is going to dig and make a hole. If you want this to stay flat, keep it flat and move your tool like this instead of like this or like this. You know, that's a chisel. You know, when you're going like that with a 9-point with a bushing tool, you want to keep it flat. Same thing if you're using a 2-blade, you know, or a bush chisel. You don't want to get a corner in, because you'll dig a hole, and then you got to fix the whole face. So your tool posture is important. That's why I said, don't see this as drudgery and stuff you hate doing and I don't want to do it. And this is going to give you skills that are going to make you more fluent in terms of your carving when you're doing your nice work, so that you don't cause problems dipping your saw, cutting too deep, tipping your tools, digging a hole out. Because when you're down on fine detail, it's easy to tip something, make a hole, and that hole becomes a weak point or a stress riser, because you've either got a ding knocked out of it, or the edge of the tool caused a little sharp area where it can start to crack, and as you work it, that crack can vibrate and open up and can cause a failure. So go slow, be patient. This is coming out really good. A little bit of a tool lesson. Any of these tools with multiple cutting edges, you know, whether it's a 2-blade, whether it's a bush chisel, or really significantly, it's one of these actual bushing tools, you know. And I don't know when they started calling these bush chisels. That's what they call them, but they're not for the same thing as these bushing tools are. Okay? It's really important that your profile on the top, they're all in the same plane. All the points are at the same height. You know, before we took the bush chisel apart, remember we sharpened it the other day, and I touched it against the side of the grinding wheel to put a flat on each blade so I could read it as I sharpened it, because I just wanted to eliminate that flat. I wanted to get rid of that line that I could see, that flat, that reflection, to just produce that one thin line down the center of each blade. Then I put them back together, and they arguably should all be the same height. It's real easy with these tools when you sharpen them, and we went over sharpening them, how you do it, how you V the wheel and go in, and then sharpen the wheel, and then go in and do it again and dress them on the regular grinder at the end. It's really easy to have this top skewed where they're not quite, one side's taller than the other, and you can keep a 9-point, which you use more than anything, or a 16-point. You can generally keep those pretty straight. These are the ones that you run into trouble. What'll happen is you'll have one point that you, as you're sharpening it, you'll have one point that you grind a little bit too much, or one side you grind a little bit too much, and you'll be left with one tall point. One of these 4 points will be noticeably taller than the other. And what'll happen is when you put that in the stone, that one tall point will just dig right in, and the tool won't move. By having these all flat across the top, in terms of they're all in the same plane, they're not tipped, and there's not one point or something that's taller than the rest, it will strike and it will bounce. And it should bounce very easily and very readily. You should be able to just take your hand machine and just won't bounce as much, just because it's getting a better bite. It's got a deeper bite with each one, but it should dance, it should bounce around, and if it doesn't, your tool is probably chipped or you sharpened it crooked. You have to go back and just touch it on the side of the grind wheel very carefully, because these points, this will just, it's gone, and hopefully it won't get stuck in the grinder, blow up the wheel, get stuck in your leg, take your finger with it, whatever. But make sure those points are all in the same plane, so you can put it on your tool and it doesn't rock, and your tool is nice and straight, nice and square. It'll make your tool work. That's what it's supposed to do. And if you've got, like I said, I had to make these 1/2-inch ones. I buy 1/2-inch cubes of this carbide, because I can make a 9-point, a 4-point, or a 16-point out of that same material, instead of buying pieces that are already formed. But the 9-point should they're not going fast like that, you're not going to get anything cut. So you got to have enough air to run your hammer, and you got to have nicely sharpened tools for them to really cut. Okay, back to work. Just to be clear, I don't know if I've said this, I probably did back there in the square and a block video, but I know people sometimes use a 9-point, and if the wind's crackling, I'm sorry, the fan's running. When you run a 9-point, you don't hold it like a chisel. You put it up there, and the only reason that your hands are involved in this is so that when you lift off, as soon as you pull the pressure off, you put pressure against it so it doesn't go and shoot out of the tool and fly off and chip something. But you just sort of corral it in there so it can't come out, and you just let it bounce. Now, the problem is if you drag your finger, you'll pinch your finger. And buddy, especially if you got an 1 1/4 machine, it'll eat some meat, and you'll wish you'd never done that. You only do it once, and you won't do it again. But just let the tool run. Don't give it room to come out, and as soon as you lift off your job, so you don't get any extra hits, you just lift up with your finger and catch it, okay? Let the tool do it. If your hand machine won't run that fast, to do that with a 9-point, you don't have enough air. It's a 1-inch machine, 1/2-inch 9-point. And it should bounce and run that fast. If you don't have enough air to do it, get your bigger compressor, okay? Or you could use it in a smaller machine, but the tool's got to go fast like that. If it's just going kind of slow, you're never going to get any cut. But you don't hold this and let it crush stone. You just let it bounce free. Stone. All right, back to regular time. Okay, I think we're going to wrap this video up. It might be a little short. Try not to talk that much here, but I've had some questions and on working, and I want to post a video that I probably should have posted a long time ago about ice carving. And about how ice is an outstanding metaphor for stone in terms of carving and practice and work. And I want to, so I'm gonna get in the storage building and dig out my kit of ice carving equipment that I use to carve literally tons of ice during my culinary apprenticeship and then afterwards. Was very fortunate to have an apprentice about 8 miles from the studio here in South Carolina at a city club, and about 2 miles from the city club was the ice house where we used to buy big chunks of ice for beer and stuff, and they had crushed ice and big blocks of ice. And same kind of deal as going into the studios in Vermont. They said, "You don't just carve ice." And I said, "Yeah, I do. Watch this." And I got a broken piece of ice one day, and they were like, "Wow, man, you really can do it." So I carved literally tons of ice there at the club, and it was a fantastic basis for stone because it breaks just like stone, cuts like stone, breaks like stone. It's just softer. So we'll talk more about it in the next video. Also, I was pretty happy to get some comments. I got some feedback on a previous video where I said, it's the master's job to help the apprentice realize that they're stupid. And I replied in one comment that I qualified that, and you've got to listen. My masters, I had people tell me more than once, you got to listen to what I mean, not what I say. Listen to what I mean. You have to let go and realize that you are subordinate, that you are inadequate, that you can't do it. Because even if you're smart enough to go and say, "Hey, I want to do this," you still don't necessarily know how to do it. And when people show up and you can't shut them up. They know more. I've had culinary people that I've hired in the kitchen that worked for me. They were so much smarter than me. It was my privilege to get to work with them, except it wasn't. They didn't know what they were doing. They were knuckleheads, And sometimes they came to that realization either while I was working with them or after I left. They were going, wow, man, I didn't realize you were right. All this stuff you said that would happen, happened. How'd you know this much? You know, I had one place. I was a executive chef at this private resort, and a small, this very, isolated resort, and I was their first executive chef, and the owner was very, very numbers man. He could take a study and do a hire an analyst and they could come in and work it out, and he was very successful in the corporate world. That's how he funded this, and he did all this stuff, and we kind of butted heads because he knew more than me, except he wasn't a chef and I was. And after I left, we kept in touch because we were still friends, and a lot of people that I worked there with me. We were close. We all lived nearby, and said that he hired this business analyst expert to come in and do a study of the operation and how to make it profitable and how to do all this work and how to everything. So he spent all this money, and they said he provided them a report, and they said that he read through it and he says, well, this is what Clint said to do. There's nothing new in this report. Everything in this report is what Clint said to do. And so he wasn't real happy. And so apparently a few months more went by, and he hired somebody else. He did a bunch more research, and he hired a second analyst to come in and go through. And one of the people in the office said when the report came in, he read it and he threw it down on the desk, and he says, all this says is the stuff that Clint said to do that the first people missed. So I didn't learn anything. And it isn't about being arrogant. If you're the master, if you know what you're doing, you need to be confident without being arrogant. You need to be supremely confident and know that I can take this 4-ton block of stone and produce the result. And the problem is that when you become arrogant about it as a master, this piece of stone that can't talk, can't speak, can't move, can't do anything except sit there and resist me is going to teach me a lesson. And I really hope, I've got to have the audacity to be able to dive into this project on the internet live, on video, whatever, but I'm capturing this and I'm going forward. And if she comes out cockeyed, crooked, ugly, y'all are going to see that I failed. There's not going to be any smoke and mirrors and I'm going to all of a sudden whip out another piece of stone and fix her. This is either going to be right or I look like a fool. And so I have to maintain a certain amount of humility. The quote at the top of my website, right on the first page, says, what I do is not profound, what the stone teaches me is. And that's been on my website for 15, almost 20 years since we had this reincarnation of the website. I'm pretty sure I had it on my old website before it disappeared. It's amazing how the more you learn, the less you know, because the more you understand, the more you realize how many things can go wrong. That's part of the stupid thing, okay? I'm just the stupid stone carver, and I'm trying to overcome a piece of stone that will sit here for eternity and ignore me. I'm trying to prove that I can do what this stone doesn't want to let me do. And you've got to find that balance. You have to submit. Nobody has to watch these videos. Nobody has to listen to anything I say. But I'm telling you what works, and I'm showing you what works. And if you do more of what I'm showing you than what you're doing that doesn't work, you might be pretty happy with the result. So I'm going to wrap this up. I want to put this, I want to pull out some different tools. And I should have done this earlier in the apprenticeship series. But this is something, I don't want everything to just be blatant and easy and on the surface you can just flip through and say, I want to learn this and this and this. You can skip all the other things. This is all one seamless experience. So we'll get this together and get this video posted, get started on the next one, and then keep cutting stone, because this really something. But you got to be able to find absolute pleasure in making a nice flat panel wherever you want to put it on purpose every time. And to me, that's as important as doing the pretty face and the pretty hands and the stuff that everybody wants to see. So hang in there. Listen to what I mean, not just what I say. Listen to what I say, too. You gotta listen to all of it. All right, thanks for watching, y'all. My name's Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor here at Carolina Sculpture Studio with the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.